Now that we have no layers or tables in our web map, let's add them all back in. We're going to use the MapContent.add method. This time we're going to use the options parameter to add back in our layers and table. So open up the add content with options.py script from the web map content folder. We have added a handful of layers to our web map throughout this section. Once more, we're going to access the map object and use the content property to access a map content object, where we can use the add method to add layers and tables to our map. Let's pay a quick visit to the add method documentation. Here we have the documentation for the add method. We see here we have this options parameter, and it is a dictionary that it accepts. If we scroll down and we take a look at options, it's an optional dictionary. You can pass in key value pairs that will edit the layer's properties. This is useful for updating the layer properties that are not exposed to the other parameters in this add method. For example, you can update the layer title, which we are going to do in this lesson. We could also update opacity or other properties that we're going to see in the next section. Let's just pop over to ArcGIS Online. Here we have the current state of our web map. We have no layers and we have no tables. We simply have our base map. Let's head back over to PyScripter and change that. We're going to need some of our item IDs. I'm going to paste in my web map item ID. And then I need the item ID for the NPWS feature service, which I'll copy from my notepad and paste in. I also need it for the NIAH feature service that contains the layer and the table, and also for the county boundaries feature service. We first access ArcGIS Online. We then use the content manager get method, and we're using our web map item ID from above. This will return our web map as an item object, which is assigned to a variable called web map item, and from that we'll create our map object and assign it to a variable called web map. First up, we have our NPWS group layer. If you recall from the first video in this section, when we added that feature service to our web map, it created a group layer with all 4 layers from the feature service in that group layer. We use the content manager get method and supply in our feature service item ID, and we assign the returned item object to a variable called NPWS feature service item. We then use our map object and the content property and the add method from the map content object to add all the layers from that feature service to our map. We supply in the NPWS feature service item as the item parameter, and we are also going to use the options parameter and set that equal to a dictionary. And we're going to use the title parameter or the title key with a value of NPWS group layer. This should name our group layer as NPWS group layer. Next up, we have our NIAH layer and table from our NIAH feature service. Here we have to account for a feature layer and a table. Similar to above, we get our feature service as an item object. Because we know there's only one layer and one table in there, we're going to use the item objects, layers and tables properties to grab the first layer and table in the service. For the layer, we're going to assign the feature layer object to a variable called feature layer. We call our map object content property add method, where the item is the feature layer, and we set our options with a title to NIAH layer, and we do the identical for our tables. We assign our table object to a variable called table. We then use the map object content property add method, where we supply in the table as the item parameter, and for our options we'll set our title to NIAH table. All that's left to do is add in our county boundaries layer. We set our item to be our county's feature service item from above here, and for the options we'll set the title to be county boundaries layer. Because we are using a method to directly affect the web map, we need to call the update method on our map object. Just before running, remember how these layers get added. We will expect that The group layer sits at the bottom of the web map, and then on top of that we have our NIAH layer, and on top of our NIH layer we should have our county boundaries layer. So let's run and check if that is the case. Our script is complete. Let's head over to ArcGIS Online and check out the result. Here we can see our current web map with no layers or tables. Let's refresh and check out the change. And we can see that our layers have been added. Our county boundaries has been called county boundaries layer. We have our NIAH layer. We have our NPWS group layer. But the layers in that group took on the default names from the service. We also have our added table of NIAH table. In this lesson, we saw how we could use the options parameter for the add method when adding layers and tables to our web map, that we could control the title, the name of the layer and table in our web maps. You can use other key value pairs, such as for opacity, and we're going to see more of these layer properties in the next section.